The wind howled through the mountains like a chorus of wolves, its cry cold and mournful, echoing off the snow-draped pines of the Montana frontier. Snowflakes swirled in angry eddies, stinging exposed skin and biting at Olivia Whitlock's cheeks as she pressed forward, half-blind beneath her bonnet. The trail to the cabin had long since disappeared under drifts that came to her knees, and the horse that had brought her this far stood tethered and trembling at the edge of the tree line, unable to move further in the deepening storm. She had walked the last half-mile on numb feet, hands white on the rifle clutched against her chest. It hadn't always been like this. 3 months earlier, she'd boarded a westbound train from Missouri with nothing but a satchel, a worn Bible, and a parcel of letters tied with twine. Those letters, dozens of them penned in a tidy, masculine hand, had painted a portrait of a new life waiting beyond the plains, a man named Thomas Mercer, a farmer in need of a good, God-fearing wife. He'd written of land rich with opportunity, of quiet nights before the fire, and of a heart ready to be shared. The words had been tender, honest, or so she believed. But when she stepped off the train at the windswept depot in Havre, Montana, no one was waiting. Hours passed. Then a grim-faced sheriff arrived with his hat in his hands and sorrow in his eyes. Thomas Mercer had been dead 2 weeks, found drunk and frozen in a ditch just outside of town. "Reckon he stopped writing you right around when the bottle started getting heavy," the sheriff had said with an apologetic shrug. The townsfolk offered no charity. They looked at her with thin-lipped pity or quiet judgment. A stranger from the east with no family, no husband, and no place. The boarding house would only take her for 2 nights. A widow without a wedding. Not their problem. So Olivia rode out, alone to the homestead Thomas had left behind. A battered cabin near the foothills miles from the nearest settlement. The land was raw, untamed. The trees whispered in a language she did not understand. Every creak of the cabin boards at night made her start. Coyotes yipped in the dark. Sometimes, she thought she heard footsteps. She took to sleeping with the rifle beside her bed. She survived by routine. Chop wood, melt snow for water, check the snares, eat sparingly, always sparingly. The pantry shelves held only a few moldy sacks of flour and a jar of pickled beets. She'd killed a rabbit once but cried afterward, whispering apologies into its limp fur. Each day bled into the next, colorless and slow, until even the ache of her grief dulled. But she spoke to the wedding dress. It hung from a nail above the hearth, still creased from travel, lace yellowing by the day. She talked to it when the silence grew too heavy, asking questions she never expected answered. "Would you have liked it here?" she whispered once, voice rough from disuse. "Would I have become someone else?" Tonight the storm was worse than any before. The fire crackled weakly, barely holding against the cold pressing through the chinks in the wall. Olivia added another log and wrapped her shawl tighter. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since the morning. A few crusts of stale bread remained, but she saved those for worse nights. The wind rose to a scream. Then, through the maelstrom, a sound, a long, guttural howl. Close. She froze. Not a coyote. Wolves. She grabbed the rifle, stepped to the window. The glass was too frosted to see. Another howl answered the first, closer, then a third. She unlatched the door and stepped into the night. Snow blasted her face, near blinding her. The cabin's lantern swung from its hook, casting a shaky pool of light. Her eyes scanned the tree line. A shape. No. Movement. A figure burst from the woods, staggering, human, limping badly. He collapsed. Just yards from the porch, she raised the rifle on instinct, heart thudding. Behind him, dark shapes prowled low against the snow. Wolves. 3, no, 4. They emerged from the shadows with slow confidence, teeth bared in the lantern's glow. The man groaned. He tried to rise, but his leg buckled beneath him. Blood stained the snow. Olivia fired once into the air. The wolves halted, ears twitching. One snarled, but none advanced. She lit a log from the fire pit and flung it flaming into their midst. The beasts recoiled, then melted back into the forest like phantoms. She knelt beside the man, breath hitching as she saw the wounds. Deep. Gashes along his thigh, a gash over one eye. His face was lean, angular. Native. His dark hair was bound loosely with sinew. He opened one eye and met hers. Expression unreadable. "You'll die out here," she muttered, more to herself than to him. He didn't speak, just coughed, blood flecking his lips. She hesitated only a moment before she hooked her arms under his and dragged him toward the cabin, the rifle bumping against her hip. He was heavier than he looked, and the snow clung to them both like wet hands. She got him inside, shut the door, barred it. The wolves howled again, distant now. The stranger lay limp on the floorboards, eyes fluttering. She grabbed a blanket, pressed it against his leg. He winced but didn't cry out. Her hands moved quickly, boiling water, torn linens. He didn't. "Fight her touch, you understand me?" she asked. A pause. "Yes," he rasped. She met his gaze. It was steady, dark, and calm, even in pain, a deep brown that almost shimmered in the firelight. "I'm Olivia," she said, unsure why she gave her name. "You're lucky I heard you." His lips barely moved. Not lucky, cold. His voice was faint, accented but clear. She cleaned, his wounds in silence. He watched her hands. She was surprised by how steady they were. "You're Navajo?" she asked after a time. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Dine." She nodded. "You were hunting?" "No." A pause. "Scouting." "For who?" He didn't answer. The fire popped loudly, breaking the tension. She wrapped the blanket around him. "I have no medicine, just herbs. And not many." He closed his eyes. Enough. Exhaustion pulled him under. His breathing slowed, steadied. Olivia sat back, staring at the ceiling, her own heart still racing. Why had she helped him? Why risk? He could be dangerous. The townsfolk had made it clear this land wasn't safe. "Savages," they'd muttered. "Can't trust them." But she hadn't seen a savage. She'd seen a man bleeding in the snow, running from death. And she knew what that felt like. Sleep didn't come easy. Every noise outside made her flinch. She kept the rifle close. But when dawn came, the wolves had not returned. She awoke to silence and the smell of smoke. The man was awake, sitting upright, watching the fire, the blanket around his shoulders like a cloak. She knelt and checked his bandages. The bleeding slowed. "You'll have a scar." He didn't respond. "What's your name?" she asked. "Toya." She repeated it awkwardly. He nodded once, curtly, then turned to the window. "They will come back." "The wolves?" He shook his head. "Not them." Olivia followed his gaze. The snow was still deep but thinning. Tracks led away from the cabin, some hers, some larger. She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "You were being hunted?" she asked. Toya didn't answer. She rose. "You should rest. You can't leave like this." "I will not stay long." She bit back her frustration. "You're half dead. You'll freeze before you reach the trees." He met her eyes again, and something passed between them. Not warmth, not yet, but something like recognition, like the first ember of understanding in a cold hearth. Neither spoke after that. She gave him a bowl of thin broth. He accepted it silently. Later, she watched him from across the room as he examined the cabin. Its crude walls, the cracked stove, the wedding dress still hanging. His eyes lingered there, unreadable. The storm had passed, but another was coming. She could feel it in her bones. And now she was no longer alone. Not entirely. She didn't know whether that frightened her more or less. But as night fell again, Olivia sat beside the fire with her rifle across her knees, watching the shadows dance on the walls. Somewhere deep in the forest, a wolf howled, once then fell silent. and for the first time in weeks she did not answer back. The morning sun filtered through the frost-laced window panes, casting a pale glow across the cabin's interior. Olivia stirred from a restless sleep, her body aching from the previous night's exertions. Toya remained motionless on the makeshift bed, his breathing shallow but steady. She approached cautiously, noting the feverish sheen on his brow. "You're burning up," she murmured, placing a cool cloth on his forehead. He flinched slightly, but did not wake. Olivia's mind raced. She had limited supplies and no knowledge of treating such wounds, yet leaving him to die was unthinkable. She spent the day tending to him, changing bandages and administering what little herbal remedies she possessed. As the hours passed, Toya's condition remained unchanged. Olivia found herself talking to him, sharing stories of her past, her hopes, and her fears. Though he did not respond, the act provided her with a sense of connection, a reprieve from the isolation that had plagued her since arriving in Montana. By evening, Toya stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He regarded Olivia with a mixture of confusion and gratitude. "You stayed," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Olivia nodded, a faint smile on her lips. "Couldn't very well let you die, could I?" He attempted a smile but winced in pain. "Thank you." Over the next few days, Toya's strength gradually returned. He spoke little, but Olivia learned to interpret his expressions and gestures. They developed a silent understanding, a bond forged through shared hardship. One morning, as Olivia prepared breakfast, Toya sat up, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "They're coming," he said solemnly. Olivia paused, her heart pounding. "Who?" "Settlers." "They saw me enter your cabin. They won't understand." Fear gripped Olivia. She had heard tales of violence and mistrust between settlers and Native Americans. "What do we do?" Toya met her gaze. "We prepare." They spent the day fortifying the cabin, securing doors and windows, and gathering what limited weapons they had. As night fell, the tension was palpable. Olivia sat by the fire, rifle in hand, while Toya kept watch. In the early hours of the morning, the sound of approaching footsteps shattered the silence. Olivia's grip tightened on her rifle as voices called out, demanding entry. "Stay calm," Toya whispered. "Let me speak to them." He stepped outside, hands raised in a gesture of peace. Olivia watched from the doorway, heart in her throat. The settlers, armed and wary, confronted Toya, accusing him of trespassing and threatening Olivia. Olivia stepped forward, her voice steady. "He's no threat. He saved my life, and I saved his. We mean no harm." The settlers hesitated, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. After a tense standoff, they lowered their weapons and departed, leaving Olivia and Toya in peace. As the sun rose, Olivia and Toya sat together, the weight of the night's events settling over them. They had faced danger and emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable. Olivia looked at Toya, a newfound determination in her eyes. "We survived, together." He nodded, a rare smile gracing his lips. "Together." The first signs of thaw came with the slow retreat of snow along the southern slope. Days grew longer, shadows shorter, and the forest began to exhale. Olivia noticed it in the trickle of water beneath the frozen streambed, in the chorus of returning birds that perched in budding trees. She spent mornings collecting firewood without crunching frost beneath her boots, and evenings with sleeves rolled to her elbows, skin warmed by the hearth. Toya healed quickly, faster than she expected. His leg, though stiff, bore his weight, again. He moved with a quiet economy, his presence in the cabin so seamless it felt as if he'd always been there. Yet he remained a man of few words. He watched the woods like they spoke to him, his eyes always scanning, listening to things Olivia could not hear. Sometimes she caught him standing still for long minutes, brow furrowed, as if weighing something far heavier than his injury. Their shared silence became its own language. She learned to read his expressions, to interpret the way he stood, the way his jaw set when he was thinking. In turn, he began to help, splitting logs, repairing the leaking roof with strips of hide and bark, even showing her how to mend a snare properly. There was no need for thanks between them. Every gesture was its own reply. One afternoon, as Olivia hung washed linens from a sagging line, she found him seated beneath the twisted pine near the edge of the clearing, shaping a piece of wood with a bone-handled knife. She approached slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. "What are you making?" He didn't look up. "A flute." She crouched beside him, watching as his fingers carved shallow holes into the smoothed cedar. "For music?" He nodded. "My people play to remember, to speak without words." Olivia hesitated, then asked, "What do you remember?" Toya paused, the knife stilled in his hand. "My mother's singing. The way the canyon echoed her voice, the color of dawn on red, rock, smoke from burning sage." He looked at her. "What do you remember?" Olivia smiled faintly. "Rain on a tin roof, my father reading psalms by candlelight, my mother's rose garden." Her voice trembled. "The last time I saw my sister." She waved from a window as the train pulled away. They sat there in silence, the weight of memory shared but unspoken. Toya returned to his carving. Olivia rose and left him to it, but she carried the rhythm of that unfinished song with her for the rest of the day. By mid-April, game grew more plentiful. Rabbits fattened, deer returned to the hills, and trout began to ripple the thawed creeks. Toya taught Olivia to move silently, to walk in the world without disturbing it. He showed her how to track by subtle signs: a bent blade of grass, a tuft of fur caught on bark, the soft print left in loam. For the first time since arriving, Olivia felt something close to competence, to control. Still, tension hung like smoke in the air. Toya became more withdrawn, rising early to scout the perimeter, often returning with reports of disturbed trails or signs of riders passing nearby. He said little of who they might be, but Olivia sensed unease in the way his eyes darted toward the tree line at night. She asked him once as they salted strips of venison near the smoke pit, "Do you think they'll come back, the settlers?" He nodded once. "Yes. Maybe not the same men, but others. Greedy ones, or scared. What would they want with me? To see who you protect?" The implication chilled her. Olivia hadn't thought of herself as anyone's protector, least of all a man who seemed far more capable of survival than she. But it was true. By offering Toya shelter, she had drawn a line, made a choice. The frontier did not forgive blurred allegiances. 3 nights later, the fire burned low as Olivia stitched a torn seam in her only decent dress. Toya sat sharpening his knife with a stone, slow and precise. The air held a charged stillness. Then, a sharp knock at the door. Olivia froze, needle suspended mid-thread. Toya stood immediately, knife slipping into his belt. He moved to the window, peering through the warped glass. 3 men, he murmured. One with a red coat. The same. From before, Olivia's heart thudded. She set the dress aside and moved toward the rifle. Another knock, firmer this time. She opened the door a crack. The wind carried the scent of sweat and horses. The man in the red coat leaned forward, hat in hand. "Ma'am, forgive the late call. We just wanted to speak." Olivia studied them, faces weathered, hands twitchy near their gun belts. One chewed a stalk of grass like it might keep his mouth from saying something foolish. "We've had reports," the redcoat continued, "that you've been harboring an Indian here. Could be dangerous, just looking out for folks." "He's no threat," she replied. "Be that as it may, it's not proper. He could be a scout, bringing others. You see the danger?" "No," she said flatly. "I don't." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We'll be back. With more questions." She closed the door before he could finish. Toya stood, behind her jaw clenched. "I won't let them take you," Olivia said. He didn't respond right away. "They'll burn the cabin, or worse." She shook her head. "They won't, not while I'm here." That night, Olivia did not sleep. Neither did Toya. They sat in silence, backs to the wall, eyes on the door. At dawn, They began preparing. Toya dug a shallow trench behind the cabin, filling it with broken glass and iron shards. Olivia gathered supplies, dried meat, extra blankets, bullets. She retrieved a box hidden beneath a floorboard, one she hadn't touched since arriving. Inside lay a letter from her sister, a locket with a faded photo, and a revolver her father had gifted her before she left Missouri. She turned it over in her hands, the weight oddly comforting. Toya watched her. "You're not the same woman who came here." "No," she said quietly. "I'm not." Later that afternoon, Toya handed her a bundle of cloth. She unfolded it to reveal the flute. Finished, polished, smooth. "Play it," he said. "I wouldn't know how." He took her hands and placed her fingers over the holes. "Breathe. Let the wind speak." Olivia raised it to her lips. The first note was shaky, uncertain. The next stronger. The sound drifted across the clearing, a gentle, haunting melody. For a moment, the world held its breath. Toya closed his eyes, listening. "I made it for you," he said. She lowered. The flute touched. "Why?" "Because your voice needs to be heard." Before she could answer, the distant echo of hooves shattered the peace. Olivia rose, flute still in hand, as dust curled on the horizon. 6 riders this time, maybe more. Armed. Approaching fast. She turned to Toya. "We won't run?" "No," he said. She nodded. Her hands didn't shake. They stepped outside together, side by side, as the sun dipped low behind them and long shadows stretched across the earth. The wind stirred her dress and caught in Toya's hair, lifting it like a banner. The riders slowed as they neared, eyes narrowing at the sight of them standing tall before the weathered cabin. No fear, no apology. And though Olivia knew the confrontation would not be peaceful, she felt a calm settle in her chest. Whatever came next, she would face it. With him. The lead rider dismounted first, dust puffing around his boots as he approached. His face was gaunt, sunburnt, lined like old leather. His hand rested on the handle of a long rifle slung across his chest, fingers twitching with anticipation. The others remained mounted, their eyes scanning the tree line, the cabin, the woman, and the man standing in front of it. None smiled. Olivia took a step forward, rifle tucked under one arm, her back straight. The world seemed to narrow into a tunnel of soundless stillness. Only the wind spoke, stirring the hem of her skirt and whispering through the pines. Toya remained at her side, his presence solid, quiet, unmoved by the threat. "You were warned," the gaunt man said, spitting dust. His voice cracked like a whip. "You were told what would happen if you sheltered him." Olivia didn't blink. "He is not yours to command, nor mine, but I will stand with him," the man scoffed. "You've gone soft, lady. Can't you see what you're inviting? He ain't like us." Toya stepped forward. "No," he said. "I'm not." The man flinched slightly at the calm conviction in his voice. Olivia could almost hear it, the prejudice faltering, the certainty eroding. But it wasn't enough. "We've got 6 guns to your 1, the man growled. "This is suicide." Olivia's heart pounded. "Then fire," she said, "and every man here will know he killed a woman for nothing but fear." The words hung in the air like flint. The gaunt man didn't draw. Instead, he waved a hand and the riders dismounted. Toya shifted, barely perceptible, eyes flicking to Olivia. They both knew this wasn't going to be resolved with words. The riders began fanning out, surrounding the cabin, taking cover. Behind the split-rail fence, the old hitching post, the empty feed trough, Toya whispered, "Inside. Now." Olivia hesitated. "I'm not hiding." Not hiding. Fighting smart. She nodded, retreating toward the door while Toya moved, the opposite direction, disappearing behind the smokehouse. A gunshot cracked. Wood splintered near Olivia's shoulder. She ducked through the door, heart thundering, dropped to the floor, and scrambled to the window. Smoke drifted outside. Toya struck first. From the blind side, he flanked the nearest rider, dragging him to the ground in a swift, silent blur. Olivia couldn't see the details, but the scream that followed was short-lived. She aimed through the window, spotted a second man moving in the open, and fired. He fell. For a moment, she forgot to breathe. The sound of the rifle still echoed inside her skull. Outside, chaos erupted. Shots rang out from every direction, sharp and panicked. Toya moved like a ghost between cover, never staying in one place, always 2 steps ahead. Olivia fired again, narrowly missing a man crouched near the rain barrel. Her shoulder screamed from the recoil, but she kept going. A bullet tore through the window frame above her head. She dropped, breathing hard. The room filled with smoke from the hearth and gunpowder. She reached for the revolver her father had given her, held it tightly, and crept toward the back door. Toya appeared, breathless, blood on his shirt. Someone else's by the look of it. He nodded once. 2 down, 3 left. I can take 1 more shot, Olivia said. No, he replied. We split them. You take the west side. Draw fire. I'll finish this. Olivia didn't argue. She slipped out the back, crouched low, and made her way around the side of the cabin. The world was fire and noise now. Time felt twisted. She ducked behind a barrel, peeked out, caught the glint of a rifle barrel. She fired, then ducked as shots whistled past her ear. Another scream, not hers. The man in the red coat stumbled from behind the fence, a wound blooming across his chest like a dark flower. He crumpled to his knees, then pitched forward. Just 2 left. A horse screamed nearby. Toya's war cry, sharp, ancient, rose above the din, followed by the clash of bodies. Olivia broke cover, sprinting low across the clearing, reaching the last rider before he could fire. She leveled the revolver. Drop it. He hesitated. Young, barely more than a boy. His rifle trembled. Please, she whispered. He dropped it. Behind her, a final shot rang out. Then silence. Olivia turned. Toya stood over the last man, his knife red, his chest heaving. Then he sank to one knee, clutching his side. Olivia ran to him. You're hurt, he nodded. Not deep, just tired. She helped him to his feet, supported his weight as they made their way back to the cabin. The clearing was littered with bodies, dust, and shattered illusions. The price of defiance. Inside, she cleaned his wound. Neither of them spoke for a long while. The fire crackled. The room smelled of blood and smoke and sage. Finally, Toya broke the silence. You didn't have to stay. I know, Olivia said, but you did. I couldn't let them define me, or you. He studied her with tired eyes. You've changed. So have you. Spring bloomed in full that week. The snow melted completely. Wildflowers crept up through the scorched earth where boots had trampled. Birds returned. So did silence. Olivia repaired the damage to the cabin. Toya rested, though he insisted on helping. Neither spoke much about the attack. The cabin had become more than shelter now. It was something sacred, shared, hard-won. One evening, Toya handed Olivia the flute again. Play, he said. Her fingers trembled at first, but the notes came. Clearer this time. Confident. She played for the ones who didn't make it. For her sister. For the land that asked so much and gave so little. Toya listened, his eyes on the horizon. You'll leave someday, he said softly. When the world pulls you back. Maybe, she answered. But not yet. He nodded. That night she dreamed of Missouri, of trains and letters never sent. But when she woke, it was to the sound of the forest, the steady rhythm of breathing beside her, and the knowledge that something inside her had finally taken root. She had come west seeking a husband and found something far greater, herself. By midsummer, travelers came through the valley, trappers, traders, men with stories and empty eyes. They asked about the cabin with the woman and the Navajo. Rumors spread, Some called her mad, others called her brave. Olivia didn't care what they called her. She stood at the edge of the clearing one morning, Toya by her side, watching the sun rise over a world that had tried to break them. She reached for his hand. He took it. No words, no promises, just presence. And that was enough. If you're still here, thank you for joining this journey into the untamed frontier. If Olivia's story moved you, if it made you feel something raw and real, please like this video, share it with someone who loves stories of resilience and connection, and subscribe for more powerful tales from the edge of history. Until next time, remember, courage is not the absence of fear but the refusal to be ruled by it.